John,
here we go.
This one is near. This one's kind of near and dear to my heart because
you guys have known each other.
I've known this guy longer than you've known this guy, for sure. And I know you've known him for quite a while. So Darren from Pinnacle Sales.
Darren from Pinnacle Sales, welcome.
He was our rep when I was at American Standard.
Yeah,
so
your rep at
covering
American Standard.
and out of the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Darren, thank you so much for taking the time today, brother. We appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
So Darren, was he a tough manufacturer to work with?
Jerk. Just be honest. You can just say it.
Scott was not. Scott was always easy. We'll just say that.
He's lying.
I know.
He's lying.
Your eyeball shrank a little bit when you said that.
Yeah. Blink twice if you're afraid.
So, awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about Pinnacle Sales. Tell us what you do, what markets you're in.
How'd you get in the business?
Yeah.
I got into the business by happenstance, but I'll tell that story. So we're manufacturers rep, plumbing and heating space. Been in business over 30 years. Cover sort of the Great Lakes region of the Rust Belt of the country. So we've got upstate New York, Western Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and the state of Ohio. A couple of counties in Kentucky, a couple of counties in Maryland. And it is actually quite interesting the time we're in as a country to see so much activity coming back to those markets. When quite literally most of my agency's time in business, those markets were stagnant and or in decline, We got started in 1991. Frankly, I can speak most to the Pittsburgh market, but in 1991, the city of Pittsburgh and the greater Pittsburgh region was still suffering from all of the globalization and export and the steel industry shutting down. We've seen industrialization come back, and that has the carryover effects, to the commercial and residential business that is our bread and butter. So we've been on a bit of a growth tear, I'd say, over the last decade. Has changed a lot just in my time in the business. I got started in 2013, and my old man started the business from age 0 to 31. It never was once discussed as a family business. It just was not in how we thought about it. I went off and became a real estate attorney, found out why attorneys get paid so much because it's terribly boring work. I hated it. And, my dad frankly needed a succession plan. He didn't really have a lot of people on his team that could step into that role. I looked at it and said, hey, he's provided for our family very well. It's a good line of work. And what attracted me most of all was a couple of things. One was the autonomy of having your own business, right? We're an independent rep agency, and we take the word independent pretty seriously.
Sure.
Second was just the nature of our business. Plumbing and heating are not going anywhere. COVID happened and we got deemed essential pretty fast.
Yeah.
Right? So, a lot of our business, we got started with State Water Heaters was one of the first lines that we started with. 2 manufacturers that we opened the doors with, and State was one of them. And, the thing about the water heater business is most people are not going to go very long without hot water. If your water heater fails, you or your wife are going to want, you're going to want that thing replaced pretty fast. So, so pretty stable business. And again, just alluding to the markets that we started in, we haven't had the boom and bust cycles of a Florida or an Arizona, where you go crazy and then the market falls out and you're down 50%, right? In our market, new construction matters, but it matters less than, the replacement and service industry, which is pretty damn consistent. Sorry for swearing. I don't know why I threw damn in, but so
we encourage that kind of thing around here. So please keep it up.
It's an R-rated version on LinkedIn.
I'm going to get you a parental advisory sticker on this one.
We're plumbing reps. Sorry.
I know exactly, but
you're used to hanging out with Stockham, I guess. The old days.
It's true. He's in
You
Ohio.
hang up the phone with him and just start swearing.
Yeah, so that's a little bit about my background, how I got in, and who Pinnacle is.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Darren, one of the things I think that besides meeting your business partner Chad, which introduced me to you guys, which is its own long semi-R-rated story. Basically, I was always impressed by the sort of thought leadership you have and the way that you look at the analytics of your business and your ability to sort of digest information and apply it, and a couple of things like we've talked about in terms of using AI to your benefit and so on and so forth. Maybe you can talk about just sort of operationally some of those key metrics, those things you look for, how our software might be able to help you with those or helps you today with those.
Yeah.
We start there.
Yeah. So I don't know if you remember this conversation, John, but we signed up with you guys, whatever year it was. And, I wouldn't say maybe the first 6 or 8 months, we were pretty much using it for, customer data, activity journals, things of that sort, just keeping tabs on what our people were doing, way to communicate on a daily basis. And we didn't really have the sales and commission data in there yet. We had that stuff in a different format. And I remember talking to you, just thinking I felt a little overwhelmed because back then I was still very much in hyper growth mode with the agency. And that meant I wore about 15 different hats. And you encouraged me, look, you need to hire somebody that's their thing. That's one of the main thing they do is really keep track of those numbers. And it turned out that very close family friend, she was the perfect fit for that. And she came on and I basically told her, you need to be the Repfabric data maven for our organization, learn everything you can about it. And she took that on, and immediately we saw the transparency and giving our sales guys just really clear analytics and numbers, where their business is, where they need to focus their time and attention and so forth. I'm a pretty big proponent of 80-20 thinking. I think that in economics, it's called the Pareto principle. It obtains in a lot of different domains in life, and manufacturing is one of them. And accordingly, a manufacturer's rep firm is where that applies to. And it's pretty consistently the case that if a manufacturer sells 100 items, 20 of those items are 80% of their volume.
Yep.
It's something like that. And when we look at our business, back when I started, we were more like we had like 90+%, 95% of our business tied up into just a couple of manufacturers, which we did great for those manufacturers. But, it's like if you were looking at your retirement portfolio, you want to be somewhat diversified, right? You don't want to have all your eggs in 2 or 3 baskets. But we took good care of those accounts, but we also knew that we needed to expand our line card, And so as we've grown, we try to continually 80-20 ourselves and 80-20, what we're focusing on with our lines, right? It's not that the lower 20% don't get attention. They do, but it's a different kind of attention. It's more of like an activation of the lines and getting them into market quickly. Whereas the bigger lines that are the bulk of our business, and people could look at our line card and figure out which of those lines are the biggest ones.
Sure.
I think I have a pretty good sense of, who my competition's lines are and kind of where a lot of the business is. And you want a consistent, if you grow your 80% lines, right? Your 20% of your lines that are 80% of your business, right? If you grow those 5 to 15% every year, you're going to be doing okay. You're going to take good care of them, and your business is going to grow, and they're going to be happy with you. So you have to do that, but then at the same time, you need to activate all of the other lines. And so for us, the way we organize our team is we're very hyper focused on achieving top 3 to 5 objectives for the business that we have today. How do we get to that 5 to 15% growth? And admittedly, we really want to see 15% growth a year. Last year was actually the flattest year we ever had. We were up a few points, but over the prior 10 years, frankly, our growth was double digits every year. And, part of the reason for that is really taking solid care of the core business, growing that. Again, if you grow 80% of your business, which is 20% of your manufacturers, if you grow that 10%, you grew the overall business 8%, right?
Right.
Yep.
You can double the other lines and not get the same growth as just taking care of those top few lines, right? So you have to always be balancing between, on the one hand, I want to get our core manufacturers to grow every single year. On the other hand, we have manufacturers that have come to us over the last several years that had almost no presence in the marketplace. They had been underrepresented or never represented. And we have a couple of manufacturers that quite literally, we were the first rep they ever hired because they were bringing a product into the plumbing industry as an example. And you activate those lines, you get them, you do the blocking and tackling with specifications, contractor pull through, wholesaler stocking commitments. You can't lose sight of the big picture with the lines that are actually not paying you anything today, right? And so for us, how we've been able to do that is really a bifurcation in our sales force between people who are account managers and people who are business development managers. When I got started as a manufacturer's rep, I remember I was with my dad and his girlfriend at the time, and they're still together. They've been together a long time, and I don't know if this conversation would go any different today, but they'd been together for a couple of years, and I asked her, what do you think my dad does? What do you think a manufacturer's rep firm is? And no idea. I mean, not a knock on her at all, but it's kind of vague what our company does, at one level. And as I thought about it and really tried to understand what it was, I kind of came up with a three-legged stool metaphor, right? Any one of these legs of the stool isn't there, you're not doing your job. And those three legs are build trust, create demand, and make it easy. And ultimately, everybody in our company needs to build trust with our customers. Whether it's our manufacturer clients, they need to trust that we have their best interests at heart and are actually executing on it. We deal with every distributor in the marketplace. And so we want to be trusted advisors to them at the very top of their organization, down to the counter and warehouse,
guys,
everybody. And part of that is the recognition that, hey, we deal with your competitors, but in the same way that we're not going to share anything with you about your competitor's business, we're not going to share anything with them about your business. And ultimately, we are trusted advisors for a large breadth of customers, right? So whether that's a customer service guy on our team, making sure they're getting tracking information and just replying to an email with pricing and availability, or it's our outside sales guy dealing with the owner of a large distributor, we have to build trust, right? So that's the first leg of the stool.
And it's easy to lose that trust without response, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that's the hardest part. You can do a great job 5 out of 6 times, but you can lose that trust just in one,
100%.
one miss.
Yep. Yeah. Trust is, it's lost in bucketfuls and it's gained in teaspoons. So
that's right.
It's an important thing to, just be consistent. That's a large part of our value proposition to a manufacturer is we've been here for 30 years. In the same market. A lot of our guys have been in the same markets for 10, 20 years, and we know the territory. We know the players. We know who's who. And so that trust building is number one. After that, creating demand and making it easy. And those are, I guess I'd say the emphasis on them is proactive versus reactive. Mm-hmm. Creating demand is going out and getting contractors and distributors and engineers to specify, install, stock a product that they didn't know they needed, right? But whether that's, a completely new technology in the industry or, a new mousetrap with a couple of new bells and whistles on it, right? Mm-hmm. And so demand creation is a huge part. And so we spend a lot of our time with the specification community, with contractors, actually working with wholesalers to activate products out into the market. Coming back to building trust, it does us no good if somebody brings something into stock, if a distributor brings something into stock and 6 months later it's collecting dust on their shelf. Right. That's a trust losing transaction, right?
Absolutely.
For sure.
And then the last part is making it easy. And we want to be the easy button. For us, we have 22 manufacturers, and there's a lot to know between all of those manufacturers. And I think we do a pretty good job of making sure we are knowledgeable about all of them. But my wholesaler counterparts, the outside sales guys, the purchasing agents, the counter guys, let alone engineers or plumbers for that matter, they have hundreds of manufacturers they could deal with, right? And I know that my subjective experiences. If I'm calling a 1-800 number and I don't know the human on the other side of the phone, I am slightly anxious at the very least because I don't know who I'm going to get, right? I don't know if I'm going to get taken care of or not. Whereas our company is the same people. They can answer the phone. They can help our customers find what they need. And, they know us by name. They know our face. We maybe have grabbed a beer or had a lunch together. We've met each other at a trade show, whatever it is. But our inside team, that's their main purview, is to be the easy button for the wholesalers, for the contractors. And so, outside sales guys got to make it easy. Inside sales guys got to make it easy. The difference, I would say, is in the emphasis. For an outside salesperson, for us, they really are getting out, getting after it every day, finding contractors that are not putting in our product and going to help them to understand why they should put in our product.
So, Darren, in the spirit of making it easy, how do you handle reporting you have to do for your manufacturing partners?
We are actually pretty fortunate that it's not a super heavy load for us today.
Good.
I don't know. I feel like there's been a little bit of a shift among manufacturers where everybody's running tighter now. I don't know any company that feels like they have a ton of extra people that can, spend their days reading reports that somebody's already executed on or they've talked about. Or there have definitely been companies that I've dealt with that we were reporting on a regular basis and they were being sent out into the ether and nobody ever read them.
Right.
And so when you're a manufacturer's rep that shows consistent growth year after year, the reporting requirements seem to get lessened. But that said, it is also quite nice to be able to run a very quick report and say, hey, I'll tell you a great example actually from just last week. We have a pretty major customer, one of our major lines. It's a heavy activation process with them right now. It's one of the biggest lines they've taken on. It was the biggest line they took on all of last year. And, we had a top to top meeting. I was able to pull a report out of Repfabric. Hey, here's all of the groundwork we've been covering, for the last 3 months, right? We had a meeting 6 or so months ago. We said, we're going to do this. You're going to do this. Come back together. Hey, here, we said we were going to do this. Here's what we've done. 33 calls in the last, 2 or 3 months, whatever it was. Right.
Beautiful.
And so the software really does make that very easy for us when it's needed.
Cool.
That's a cool story.
Hey. How about quote follow-up? I know you guys spend a lot of time doing quotes, and you mentioned before that, you've also got a lot of price and availability type quotes that come in. Your organization's a big organization, so I'm sure you're digesting tons of quote requests. How do you guys manage that side of the business?
Yeah. Well, so it's a combination. On the one hand, we want to be the local experts on our lines. We want to be a resource. At the same time, our job is to gain mind share with our customers. Again, every customer we have has 5 other places they could get anything we rep. And so on the one hand, we want to be that resource that they can come to. And they know that if they have a water heater issue, a pump issue, a fixture, a this or that, they can come to us and we can get them an answer. At the same time, our job is to educate and train. And so the more that we can get our customers to be self-sufficient, to be their own champions of the lines that they stock of ours already, the better. So what we try to do with quotes, why I say that with respect to your question on quotes is we do get a lot of, requests on pricing that would actually be quite easy for somebody to learn how to do themselves. And so we are constantly looking for the opportunity to export our knowledge into their brain so that they can be more self-sufficient and get after it with our brands more easily. So whether that's creating marketing materials that again, 80-20, some of these lines down, right? So take state water heaters, right? We have however many SKUs, thousands of SKUs. 20% of those SKUs, maybe less, are going to be most of the business, right? So if I can get the distributors to be really self-sufficient on the core business, it lowers the back and forth between our organization and their organization to actually get the product quoted and sold to the contractors, right? So that all said, there are a lot of products we have in the commercial space that are not 80/20 lines that a wholesaler is going to sell every single day. There are specialty products, whether it's custom panels, custom water heaters, custom pumps, drains. I don't know if either of you guys have ever had the pleasure of selling drains, but you could have
Other configurations.
you could have 10
Hundreds.
hyphenations after the model number for all the different options,
Yeah.
And so, so it's a constant process, but for us, it's really about pipeline management and focusing in on really our inside team has specific markets that they're responsible for. We want them to know the customers as well as our outside guys do. And our outside guys and their inside counterparts are having monthly pipeline meetings to make sure that, hey, we quoted this $50,000 project. Did anybody ask about it since then? Right.
Yeah.
It does us no good, again, to send an email out into the ether and never have a human to human conversation.
Especially tracking those impact projects, impact jobs. That's key, it seems, right?
Yeah. And so part of the 80/20 kind of perspective is also at the very individual level. Mm-hmm. And this is an exercise that our team is constantly doing, from our warehouse manager to me, is brain dump everything you do on a weekly or monthly basis, or even annual basis. Brain dump all of it. 50 things, right? What are the top 10 things of that list that was actually 80% of the value you brought to the organization, right? And that can be a little fuzzy at one level, because how valuable was a certain task? How many dollars did they add? You can't always tell. But it's a good practice to get you in the mindset of, all right, if we're going to continue investing in our company with more personnel, right? The answer to how we do that is the existing people that we have, if they can delegate to a new person and then redouble their efforts on the things that are actually driving the business forward, that's how you continue to scale. Our company has, we 5X'd in the 10-year period from 2014 to 2024.
That's incredible.
And
5X.
Yeah.
thank you. It's been fun. I mean, it's actually been a lot of hard work, but also we have a team that we love doing it together. I mean, we're building something together. And
you must have some pretty efficient processes too to be able to get that kind of growth.
Yeah, you have to. Because for manufacturers reps, so to come back to something I said about organizations that I'm not aware of too many organizations that have a lot of fluff in their headcount. They're all running pretty lean. What that ends up meaning is we, as the manufacturer rep, we're kind of like the hub of the market in some ways. We got manufacturers coming on one side, distributors coming, contractors, engineers. I've kind of like, again, trying to explain what we do to other people, including vendors we deal with, giving them a map of where we fall in the marketplace is actually, it can get a little confusing for them. But what that ends up meaning is manufacturers tend to rely on us more and more over time to do things that maybe 10 years ago, they had people that did that internally, right? Whether that's order entry, pricing, technical support, quotations, obviously warehousing. I mean, about, a third of our business is buy and resell, where we're the, quote unquote master distributor, and so you're running inventory management. You're responsible for inventory control. You're responsible for logistics, getting people tracking information on their order, things that might have been available in a portal with a manufacturer on some of the larger manufacturers. A lot of that stuff can get delegated downward to us. And so we have to be super efficient. And we have to take that 80/20 thinking, right? And so if one of my key employees has, 50 tasks and 20 of those tasks are like the make or break, do or die, well, can we delegate the other 30 to somebody else in our organization, and or can we automate them?
Yeah. There you go.
And that's where I've appreciated the webinars you guys have been doing on AI. Because I'm trying to follow that as closely as I can. And we get a lot of questions every day that I think that in the very near future, it's going to be quite cost effective to have an AI actually answer those.
No question.
And appreciate the shout out on the webinars. And I would say stay tuned because there's more coming, particularly as it relates to AI within Repfabric.
That's right, quite a bit.
Cool. Hey, this has been amazing. Always good to talk to you, but in this format was pretty cool to hear your thoughts. So thank you so much.
Happy
to.
Hey,
if people want to reach you or Pinnacle, LinkedIn, email, what's the best way to get
LinkedIn, pinnaclereps.com.
PinnacleReps.com.
You can chat at us on our website. You can check out inventory. Some of the things we're doing to take some friction out, make it easy.
Make it easy.
Awesome.
I love it.
I
love it. Build that trust, demand generation, make it easy. So cool
stuff.
Thanks, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Darren.
Appreciate you.